In this lesson, we will review the Georgia Lease for Lease and Purchase Agreement Exhibit form. Sometimes, sellers in Georgia and prospective purchasers enter into both purchase agreements and lease agreements at the same time. There are several potential reasons for doing so, but the most common reason relates to financing. Sometimes, a prospective buyer is not able to obtain a mortgage loan right away, but intends to do so, and believes he or she will be able to secure financing at a later date. A seller might agree to enter into a lease agreement with the buyer either having the obligation or the right to purchase the property at the end of the lease term. The Georgia Lease for Lease exhibit is designed as an exhibit to be used in conjunction with the purchase agreement for a real estate transaction. Let's look at some of the most important sections of this exhibit, starting with Part A, Section 1. This section includes the street address for the property subject to the agreement, including the city and county. If the owner/lessor is only leasing part of the property or otherwise needs more room to accurately describe the property, the parties should attach a separate Exhibit A with additional information. The time frame for the agreed-upon lease is an important element in this type of transaction. Section 2 is the spot where the parties should document the date they agree the lease will start. In addition, the parties should document the length of the approved delay period in Section 2. This is the time period after which the tenant could legally cancel this lease agreement without penalty if the property owner fails to let the tenant occupy the property after the start of the lease. For example, let's say property owner Joe and tenant Jane enter into a lease for lease agreement, providing a lease start date of May 1st, with a 3-day approved delay period. On May 4th, Joe still has not turned over possession of the property to Jane. Jane would be within her rights to cancel the agreement under this provision. The lease for lease exhibit does not include an end date. That's because the end date is presumed to be the closing date for the purchase transaction, as provided in the purchase agreement. Section 3 documents the agreed-upon rent that the tenant will pay the property owner. The parties should provide the amount of monthly rent, who it is payable to, where it should be delivered, the day of the month it is due, what form of payment is acceptable, and the consequences of paying late. If a tenant pays late, this section of the agreement specifies when exactly the payment is deemed late and what the applicable late fee will be. In addition, tenants who accept credit cards or ACH transactions can use this section to document applicable convenience fees and service charges. In Section 4, the property owner dictates the amount of the security deposit, if any, they expect the tenant to put down, acceptable forms of payment, and where the deposit will be maintained. Security deposits are intended to protect the property owner from potential damage that can occur when non-owner renters occupy their property. Property owners are obligated to maintain the security deposit for the renter and to return it if the renter adheres to the terms of the agreement. Part B of this exhibit includes more details about this section, including both the renter and the property owner's rights and obligations with respect to the security deposit. Section 5 is the section that clearly identifies this exhibit as part of the purchase agreement the parties executed. Both parties' names should be listed here, along with the date of the buyer's offer. The parties identified in Section 5 are the parties to whom notices under the agreement and this exhibit will be delivered. In certain circumstances, when a broker is acting as a manager, as discussed more thoroughly in Part B, the parties' brokers may accept notices on their client's behalf. Let's skip now to Section 14, Use. This section is where the parties document who is authorized to occupy and use the property under this lease agreement. This exhibit form should be used only for leases of residential real estate, for residential purposes only, and every adult who will live on the premises must be listed in Section 14. Part B provides an important distinction and definition of a guest, whose name does not need to be included on the lease. The parties and their brokers should all understand what constitutes a guest and what constitutes a tenant. The last section we will cover in this lesson is Section 19, the lead-based paint provision. If the property subject to the lease agreement was built after 1978, the property owner need only check the applicable box in this section. If, however, the property or any part of it was constructed prior to 1978, the property owner must also provide the tenant/purchaser with a copy of the lead-based paint pamphlet, Form CB04, and the lead-based paint exhibit, Form F316. Part B of the exhibit form, which starts on the bottom of page 2, provides additional details and reference information about these sections and the other sections. As a real estate professional, you should have a solid understanding of this form, so you are encouraged to review the sections we didn't cover here on your own.